So we learned a lot from that criminal complaint filed today against the accused Buffalo mass shooter, much of it highlighting the racist motivation behind his attack, which of course led to those hate crime charges, among others. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland saying that the shooter actually apologized to a white person whom he shot before then moving on to try to kill more black people. It's part of a disturbing trend laid out by the head of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division during today's news conference.
Every day we see evidence that racially motivated hate crimes are on the rise across our country. According to the FBI's most recent data, most victims of racially motivated hate crimes are black. These acts of hate are a stain on our democracy and have no place in our society.
That is a theme that we've heard a lot in the month since this attack. And joining us right now to discuss this is Scott Richman, the regional director of the Anti-Defamation League. Scott, thanks so much for coming on. We heard from the head of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division there about, this nationwide rise in hate crimes against black Americans. Your reaction to that, and what are you seeing in terms of New York State?
Yeah, certainly the FBI hate crimes data, which we all rely on for understanding the situation of hate crimes in this country, showed, the latest one showed that the group that is attacked the most are African Americans. They're the victims of the largest number of hate crimes across this nation. In New York, certainly it's on the rise in New York as well. We just came out with something called a report that was called Hate in the Empire State. It's a report. We didn't plan this. We planned to release it on June 1st a long time ago. We didn't realize that the mass shooting would happen in Buffalo, but it certainly is timely, and it speaks about African Americans being one of 4 groups that are attacked in terms of hate crimes across New York, and the other 3 being Jews and Latinos and Asians.
The alleged shooter's so-called manifesto, this racist rant that he left behind, made it pretty clear that he believed in white supremacist ideology. The Attorney General Merrick Garland gave a pretty chilling account today of how that kind of played into what this teenager is accused of doing inside the supermarket. Let's listen to the AG.
At one point, he aimed his rifle at a white male Tops employee who had been shot in the leg and injured. Instead of shooting the white employee, the gunman apologized to him before continuing his attack.
So, Scott, you have that plus the alleged apology letter that he left to his parents in which he said that he had to do this to help preserve the future of the white race. You have his online messages. Taking all that together, I think it shocks a lot of people that this level of racist hate exists in our country, exists in our state. I imagine it doesn't shock you, though, as somebody who tracks this stuff.
It doesn't shock me because I'm exposed to it on a regular basis, but or maybe it doesn't surprise me, but it always shocks me because it's always very disturbing that people believe in this nonsense. We do have an issue in New York State. I mentioned the Hate in the State report, and it talks about principally 3 groups that are active in New York State, statewide: the Patriot Front, a relatively new group called White Lives Matter, and the New Jersey European Heritage Association. It's a group that started in New Jersey but has moved to New York. All 3 of them are quite active in New York. We can see this by the white supremacist propaganda and the rise in white supremacist propaganda, stickering and flyering and banner drops that we now see across the state. In the past 5 years, there has been a 10-fold increase in such white supremacist propaganda. They use it to spread messages about white power and as a recruitment tool. There's a website always that people can go to. And specifically in Western New York, you see the rise of the Watchmen. The Watchmen are not a white supremacist group, but they are a far-right nationalist group.
Finally, Scott, ever since this happened, a lot of people have kind of asked themselves, what can I do? And in many cases, that meant donate money or, help a charity or do something, right? And I think part of that is also folks asking themselves, what can I do personally to fight back against this type of hate? What do you tell people when they ask that question?
So I can wear many hats here. There are a lot of ways to help, but wearing my ADL hat, I'm going to talk about two aspects of this that are really glaring to me. one of which is social media, and the second is extremism. In terms of social media, this is a person who was radicalized online. Social media does a lot of good in our world. It gives people a voice, but it also gives haters a voice. And making sure that our social media is regulated, which it's not, putting that legislation in place is critical. Making sure that our social media companies have policies where they don't allow such hate and misinformation on their sites is critical. The second aspect is extremism. ADL is an organization that's been fighting extremists for many years, but following January 6th, we came out with something called the Protect Plan, PROTECT. I spell out all those letters because each letter stands for a different aspect. We need laws in place to curb extremism in this country. The Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act, for example, federal legislation, very important. It's passed the House, but it hasn't yet passed the Senate. These kinds of measures are critical to respond to the extremism and the radicalization on social media that we're seeing.
Scott Richman is the Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League. Scott, thanks so much for coming on this important day.
Thank you.